Good evening, good evening.
Good evening.
So by the way, it's okay to comment while we're doing this. And then when I mute you, I'll let you know that you're muted and I want you to stay muted. So I know it's a little hesitation. Like, oh, should we talk? Should we not talk? You gonna beat us? Everybody doing okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
All right, let me get us connected to Facebook. We will have a brief prayer and then we'll get right into it. And my intent is to keep class relatively short tonight, although I'm fully cognizant of the fact that I said that yesterday and we went for 2 hours. So
We went for 3 hours.
Yeah.
no, we did not. Stop that. Stop telling tales.
Want to bet, Sherman? No, just kidding. I don't want to take your money tonight.
Uh-oh. Ooh. Sounds like somebody's throwing down a gauntlet. Let me see if I can find it here. Oh, that's interesting. I wonder what I did differently. Interesting. So hopefully we'll get it right this time. Just waiting for it to fire up inside of Facebook just to make sure that we're getting a good recording. Isn't that weird? Okay, I guess we're there. Okay, yeah, we're in there. But that's still weird. I guess I'll have to edit that later. I'll show you what I'm fetching about in a second. Let me just get everybody in here. Tell you what, while we're still getting people admitted in, this is a Real Investors event. We start our events with a prayer. So would you please join with me? Dear Lord, we thank you so much for your blessings. Lord, this is a crazy, crazy time in this country. We need you now more than ever. We need your hand on our leaders more than ever. We need your hand upon our people more than ever. In Jesus' name, amen. So we're going to do a quick review. I'm not going to go nearly as long as yesterday. I think I made my point based on the homework that you guys submitted. And then I'll get into the lesson for tonight. Thank you all for making that schedule adjustment with me. I may have to do it one more time, but I greatly appreciate the fact that you guys were so flexible. But I will also respect the fact that since we're starting an hour later today, that I'm going to do my darndest to keep this to a 1 hour and 15-minute session, okay? And if I don't, ice cream for everybody. And y'all like, why do we want ice cream in the middle of winter? Because that's just the kind of guy I am. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and put everybody on mute. It's not because I don't love you. It's just that it's much better if everybody's not talking over each other. So I'm going to put everybody on mute. Mute all. And first thing we want to do is let's go ahead and just take a look at the homework. So let's share screen. And can everybody see my screen okay? If you can, give me a thumbs up. Let me pull this over here where it's under the camera. And then move this. So everyone see me okay? Thumbs up? Yeah? Yeah? Okay. All right, thank you. All right, so first thing let's do is take a look. Day 2 homework goes here. And you guys did an excellent job of following instructions in that regard, and I greatly appreciate it. Day one homework here. I do have a couple of people, unfortunately, who did post homework outside of where I asked. And as a result, Aru, I'm sorry, but that's getting deleted. And the reason why it's getting deleted is not because I don't appreciate you and I don't want to respond to your homework, but it's your homework's in the wrong place. And if homework is in the wrong place, I am going to delete it. Not that it's a violation of the quote unquote rules, but like I said yesterday, if I don't manage this process, we'll have these posts everywhere and it'll become an unmanageable mess. Alicia, appreciate you, but your homework is an orphan and I need for that homework to be in the section that says post homework here, day one, day two. When I finish up tonight, we'll have a day three. So because I need your homework where it needs to be, I'm so sorry, but this here is boop, 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 gone. All right. And I deeply apologize that your stuff got deleted, but it was in the wrong place. Got to put it in the right place. So again, when you guys post your homework this evening, please make sure you look for day 3 homework. Please post your completed tasks, ahas, in here. I did go through, my schedule was a little bit off today, but I did go through and look at folks' homework, and it was very clear to me from what you guys did yesterday versus the day before, you really are getting it. And the first thing I want to do is just sort of commend everybody to say, thank you, thank you, thank you. You are clearly not just quote unquote making an effort, but you are making the changes on the fly. And as I said to you in the very first session, my main goal and my main job is to get you out of your comfort zone, because the only way I'm going to be able to help you get from where you are and into the promised land is if you're willing to get out of your comfort zone and come with me. And so I know for some of you, you're like, why is Sherman so harsh on my, with the critique and everything? Can't I just do it my way? And the answer is no, you can't just do it your way. There's a reason why we do things for a reason. And I know that this first couple of days task seems so simple and almost simplistic, but my goodness, guys, if we can't get this first part done, when I start getting into the really heavy stuff, y'all gonna be all over the place. So if we're gonna get to where we need to get to, you gotta just trust me. And trusting me means please allowing me to critique and following through. So again, just a real quick, here's somebody's homework right here. They put their number 1 goal. They got into a little bit of detail about what was going on during their day. Clearly got the 21 day, and they got in the right place. Let's see, she originally said going to do it at 7. Like, no, Sherman said 8 o'clock. So excellent job. Talked about what phone calls or text messages to put out. Talked about a little bit of planning. Excellent job. And that's why in the comments, I said excellent. And they said, thank you. Here, I'm going to pick on Eugene a little bit, Robert Eugene. And he said, done. Today's number 1 goal is done, complete, and had this little asterisk with a circle. And I interpreted that to mean that what they were saying, or what he was saying, was he wants to have this thing and 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 this thing done and complete. So because it's got an asterisk and a circle, and it says, I don't know if you guys can see this or not, it says done, complete. Today's number 1 goal, I will not go to sleep tonight until I have done, complete. And little star, circle, and I got a star, circle here, star, right? So I interpreted this to mean that this person wasn't going to go to bed until they had this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oop, that's not circled. So 9 things done. And so therefore my comment was, good start, but one thing means one thing. And that's what I mean. When you write up here, what's the one thing you want to get done before today's number 1 goal? That's what it means. What is the number 1 thing you want to get done? And putting that there when you do your planning, either putting it there first thing in the morning or the night before, doesn't really matter, but saying to yourself, hey, listen, no matter what happens during my day, no matter what interruptions happen, no matter what stuff hits the fan, I'm not going to sleep tonight until I get this one thing done. And as your mentor and your coach, first thing I want you guys to understand is it means one thing, not a dozen things. Because chances are, if you put on your schedule a dozen things, you're not going to get a dozen things done. I can almost guarantee you that, unless there are a dozen little, individual, I can knock them out in about 10 minutes kind of things. But the one thing means the one thing, and it should be like the most important thing in your day. And you may block out 3, 4, 5, 6 hours to get that one thing done, but you might have a whole school of interruptions that prevent you from getting to that one thing, but you still got to stay up till, whatever it takes to get it done before you go to bed. That's what it means. It is a way of saying to yourself, I got to get, no matter what happens in my day, this got to get done. That's what it means, one thing, okay? So in my critique and my comment there, that's what I was saying. And it forces you to recognize before you start your day, at the start of your day, that no matter what happens today, this has got to get done. And that prevents you, quite frankly, from wasting too much time on stuff that is unimportant and making sure that you're dedicating the appropriate amount of time to things that are important. In other words, what's at the top of your list? What's at the very top of your list? Like you said, no matter what happens today, I'm going to get this done. Okay, first of all, did you block time for it? Second of all, are you serious about no matter what happens today, you're going to get that one thing done? So it needs to be discrete, it needs to be specific, and it needs to be one thing, not a dozen things. Okay. All right, keep on moving along. I for the most part, I didn't critique, there's really no reason for me to critique your aha moment. If you have an aha moment and yours is different from somebody else, glory, hallelujah, we're human beings. We should have different things. I would strongly suggest, like I said yesterday, go through on the Facebook group and look at what other people's aha moments are and see if maybe they caught something that you didn't catch. It's a great learning tool. But I didn't really critique that. I really sort of kept my comments and critiques to the daily schedule. So if things were good, I said good. If things were excellent, I said excellent. Here's another excellent one. I've already pulled up, again, putting some detail in there. Going to study here, going to work on this, got an exam to deal with, circled the 8 o'clock just to remind themselves, hey, it's not 7 o'clock tomorrow, it's at 8 o'clock start time. Excellent. And then, of course, the number one goal, gather, create, study materials for the exam. So no matter what's happening, before she goes to bed, she's going to pull all that stuff together. All right. That's why they got an excellent remark from me. Again, I didn't really comment too much on the ahas. I saved my comments and critiques for the schedule. And anytime somebody said something that was just a little vague or a little nebulous or wasn't discrete or specific, I sort of called you guys on it. Because again, what I want here and what you should be doing here is something specific. So example, this person said, check on getting phone number for business, right? Check on getting phone number for business. That's just a little too vague. And so my comment to this person was, get the phone number. Don't check on getting phone number. Like before you go to bed, make sure you nail down a phone number. And so I said, well done, but I prefer it be get phone number for business. And then I went on to make the additional comment, real estate rewards for what you actually got done. And that's a true statement. Real estate rewards you for what you get done, not what you think about getting done, not what you're gathering to get done, not what you're anticipating. Like real estate rewards you for getting it done. So we want to get into the habit early on, especially in this class, of getting things done and not letting too many things creep into tomorrow, mañana, later. And please type it in the chat box. I'm going to ask you your first quiz question for today. Later equals, put it in the chat box. Later equals, what does later equal? Put it in the chat box. That's right, never. If you say to yourself, I'm going to do it later, you might as well be honest with yourself and say, I'm going to do it never. Later equals never. If you put it off to later, it's not going to get done. All right, so don't allow yourself to continuously fall into that habit. Later equals never. All right, so anyway, everybody kind of get the swing of what my comments and critiques were from last night's homework. Is everybody kind of getting it now? Kind of getting into the flow of how we should be using the AHA sheets and kind of getting into the flow of how we should be doing our daily schedule. And even if we have some other kind of calendar program, using it as a quote unquote daily audit for the next 21 days, because it really will help you see by writing it down how you're spending your time. And are you spending it wisely and efficiently, or are you, letting other things sort of creep in? Social media has a way of, creeping in and eating up too much of our time and being a colossal time suck. Spending a little too much time, talking to friends, spending a little too much time being the social animal. It's great, it's wonderful. We need to connect with other people, but if we're not careful, we can wind up missing out on the things that need to get done because the things that were more enjoyable in the interim, the short run, wind up sucking up all our time. Okay, so again, great job for everybody. Give yourselves a hand. Woo! Woo! And I'll be posting again tonight a place for you to put your homework for today. Okay, so enough with that. Does anybody have any questions you want to ask me through the chat box about the critique on last night's homework? Anybody, is there anything I did that anybody didn't understand? Anybody? And again, I would say this to you one more time. I think a couple people, only a couple, are still sort of missing the gist of it. The front side, excuse me, of your scheduling sheet, the front side, that is prospective. You do that the night before, you do that the Sunday before, but this is what you're going to do the next day, or this is what you're going to do today. This is all done before the day starts. The back side of the sheet, the blank side of the sheet, is where you can take notes about what happened. So do not fill these sheets out going, okay, this is what I did today on the front side. That goes on the back side. The front side is all about, hey, I'm getting ready to start my day tomorrow. I want to sit down and plan out what's going to happen in my week this week. So I'm gonna sit down Sunday night and have 7 of these things and sort of map out the whole week. Or I'm getting up early and and again, I would recommend that you don't put the whole thing together the day of, but maybe you put stuff together and then something happens just before you go to bed. You know what, first thing in the morning, I want to just make a couple of changes, or, maybe you reserve the most important thing of the day until you start the day. That's fine. But at the end of the day, you're supposed to be using the front side of the sheet before you start your day. And then as things go along, recording what happened and what you need to follow up on and what changes you need to make on the backside. That's why we leave the backside blank, free form. Okay. All right. So with that, I'll stop sharing that part of my screen and I'll start sharing this part of my screen, and we'll get into today's coaching, mentoring session. And today's session, I'm calling The Dirty Little Secret. Everybody can see my screen okay? Yes, yes, yes. Give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen okay? Yes, okay. All right, 21 Days to Real Estate Riches. Quick review, we are here. Look at the progress we're making. Isn't that great? Isn't that great? Give us a hand. We're moving along. I know some of you guys may think, well, Sherman, go faster, and some of you guys are saying, Sherman, slow it down. But look, we said week 1, we're gonna build the foundation. We're about halfway through midweek and we're already through this part of the training, okay? We've already done our homework recap analysis. And today we're talking about Real Estate 101, why real estate, which was yesterday, and why get rich in real estate program from the A&E stars doesn't work. But we're also gonna talk about what does, okay? And so first I'd like to start off, some of you guys may have heard of this book. In 1955, a gentleman by the name of Rudolph Flesch, I'm not making this up, Rudolph Flesch, wrote a book, or published a book, excuse me, called Why Johnny Can't Read. What a course. Why Johnny Can't Read. Anybody here ever heard of that book? Maybe you didn't read it, but you heard the title, Why Johnny Can't Read? Anybody? So Sherman's going into the library and finding these esoteric books that nobody's ever heard of. Sherman, stop that. All right, so Why Johnny Can't Read, that was the name of the book. And it really was quite earth-shattering and groundbreaking. Because what Rudolph Flesch really pointed out was the predominant methodology for teaching young children first, second, third grade about how they should learn to read was totally flawed. Totally flawed. And for several years, if not decades, and again, I wasn't around when the book was published. I do know the title. My mother's a teacher. My father's a teacher. I went to school to become a teacher. And then later on, as many students do, change my major and my focus. But I grew up in a family of teachers. And so teaching paradigms and how people learn and how people teach and how teachers teach, that's always sort of been around my environment. Some kids grow up in a family that all they talk about is business. I grew up in a family that the predominant conversation around the dinner table was teaching and learning. And so I remember my mother had this book because my mother was a special education teacher. And my father, on the other hand, was military and then wound up becoming on the faculty at Howard University. But I do kind of remember not only the book, but also the title of the book, even though I never actually read it. Bottom line is this. Rudolf Flesch basically said, look, the way we're teaching our kids to learn how to read is flawed. And he had the audacity to propose a new type of teaching, which interesting enough wasn't new at all. He kind of went back to the way that students were taught to read back during the sort of 1800s. And he said, we lost touch with some of the ways that we used to teach people how to read. And in America today, 1955, mid to late 1950s, we're not doing as well as the rest of the world in reading. And we need to go back to the paradigm that works. And so the paradigm that he proposed and professed was phonics. Anybody here ever heard of phonics? I remember as a kid, my mother brought home these beautiful records. And for you youngsters who are like, what the heck's a record? We used to take these round things with a hole in the middle. And these weren't just any records. These were not 45s. These were 78. So these were huge. And I remember they were red, yellow, blue, and green. And the records, along with the record player, was something called Hooked on Phonics. And in kindergarten, I learned how to read because my mother brought home this record, and my sister and I would listen to it. And I'll never forget, A-E-I-O-U, as in lady, I owe you some sugar. And learning first the vowels and then the consonants and how they go together, and learning that, hearing that before we even start getting into the A, B, C, D, E, F, G. My sister and I were both reading pre-kindergarten. I learned how to read when I was like 4 years old. My sister at 5 years old. So long before we were kindergarten, first grade, we were already reading at like a second, third grade level. And it was because of this technique that Rudolf Flesch was advocating of teaching people how to do things the right way. And fundamentally, what he was saying in the book is that everybody's running around going, gee, how come my kid can't read? How come they're not proficient? Well, the reason why is because the teaching that's been made available to them up until this point is flawed. And the reason why Johnny can't read is Johnny doesn't have a chance because that which we call learning, that which we call reading learning is flawed, deeply flawed. And this guy, Rudolf Flesch, in 1955 had the audacity to say, hey, wait a minute, hold on, guys. The whole way in which we're doing this is screwed up, and we need to fix it before we fall further and further and further behind the rest of the world. And that was a gutsy thing for him to say and a gutsy thing for him to do. But today, as far as I know, and again, I'm not an elementary school teacher, but the number one way that most kids are taught preschool and elementary school to read is through phonics and understanding how the letters and the vowels and the consonants work together, besides just learning this sort of rote A, B, C, D, E, F, G. That's what I'm told, okay? So if I were to sort of have a similar experience in real estate and to write a similar kind of book for, I would call it the first, 15, 20 years of my life, trying to figure out this real estate thing, and I were to write a book about it, I would probably, the title of the book would probably be, why Sherman can't do real estate. Sort of on a play on why Johnny can't read. Like, why can't Sherman do real estate? And I don't know if anybody else sort of feels the same way that I used to feel, but I kind of like to believe I'm not a dumb person. I kind of like to believe I'm not a stupid person. And for the life of me, every time I attempted to learn how to get into this real estate game, I would invest in some educational materials. I would make my absolute best stab at it, and the darn thing still didn't work. And let me give you some examples. In 1978, I was a high school student. I think I was a sophomore in high school. I graduated high school in 80, Howard High School, Columbia, Maryland, Go Lions. And I remember going to a seminar. My mother became a real estate agent working with this new kid on the block named Craig Northrup. And at a very early age, I expressed an interest in real estate. My mom was interested in real estate. And we heard about this guy coming to town. I think he may have advertised in the local paper. I don't recall it being a newspaper ad. And it was all about, quote unquote, how to buy real estate. I think nothing down or get rich in real estate. I don't remember the title of it. But we went to this seminar at the Sheraton Hotel. It was the Sheraton Hotel in Columbia, Maryland, right off of 175. And the guy was a really good pitch man. And we went to the free seminar and walked out of the room having paid, I think, something in the order of $2,500. My mother put it on a credit card for training materials that would help us make money as real estate investors. And it was a clamshell that when you open it consisted of 2 cassette tapes. There was 2 cassette tapes on one side and a booklet on the other. And we were supposed to get rich in real estate. And the guy's name, I'll never forget, was William J. McCorkle. And we bought the material. We did what the material said to do, and it still didn't work. Later on, found out many years later that McCorkle actually went to jail for fraud. In fact, they put him in jail for a pretty long time because the stuff that he was selling, he knew it didn't work, but he was selling it anyway. And the stories he had were totally fictitious and totally made up. And then a few years later, kind of like from the period 1980 to 1987, which was about the time I graduated from high school and I was in college and in grad school, I purchased a number of books and tapes, mainly from late night TV infomercials, everything from a guy named Dave Delgado to Al Lowry and a whole bunch of folks in between. And it was all on getting rich in real estate, paying anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000. But later on, again, found out, and I opened them up and I used them, to be totally honest, totally truthful, some of which still had the cellophane on them for years. But I did open up a couple of them and did make a stab at it, and they still didn't work. They didn't work. And then I later on found out that some of the people who were selling stuff on late night TV either went to jail or had to settle lawsuits with the Federal Trade Commission because their stuff was junk, and they knew it was junk. Then, of course, 1990s, this guy named Carlton Sheets comes on the scene. He has a whole home study series on nothing down. I not only bought it once, I bought it twice. And I think, quite frankly, I bought it 3 times. And fortunately for me, my mother taught me at a very young age, again, family teachers, never read anything without a highlighter or a red pen. And so every time I read material, especially any kind of instructional material, I'm reading with the highlighter or a red pen. So I know exactly where I stop. And interesting enough, before I threw out Carlton Sheets' stuff, I looked at all 3 versions. I gathered together, but at one point in time, it was so stupid. I gathered together all of my real estate investor stuff. And I said, okay, if this person's gone to jail, that's going in the trash. And if I tried my hand at this is going to trash. And I gathered up all the Carlton Sheets stuff and I flipped it open before I threw it out. And I realized I had stopped in the same place, all 3 versions. Because, they come out with the new, they come out with the thing, and then they come out with the new and improved, and then next year it's another new and improved, and then next year it's like really new and improved, right? Probably one of the reasons why it's taken me so long to update the 21-day course is that whole sort of notion of every year it's new and improved. I'm like, if it's every year it's new and improved, what were you teaching people last year that didn't work, right? So in any event, I went to the Carlton Sheets stuff, and I noticed I'd stopped every single place. And the place that I stopped, it kind of went like this. Carlton Sheets says, okay, you got my material, great. First thing we're going to do is we're going to put ads in the paper. Okay, I'll put an ad in the paper or a classified ad, whatever it was he said to do. Second thing, set up a phone number or have a dedicated phone number. Had a dedicated phone number. So third thing, phone's going to ring. I said, phone's going to ring. Fourth thing, he says, okay, when it rings, you're going to ask the people this. That's where I stopped everywhere in that training. Why? Because when the phone rang, I'm like, I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what I was doing. And the one thing about Carlton Sheets is he said, okay, the phone rings, but he wasn't there sitting in the room with me going, and I'm like, okay, Sean, now Carlton, what'd I say? He wasn't with me. And so every time the phone would ring, I'd be like, okay, I'm too nervous. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. And I just sort of I just throw my hands up and I quit. I give up. And that's what happened, all three versions. So anyway, way too much time on Carlton Sheets. And then 2001, right after the birth of my son, many of you guys know my story. Claire and I got married. It was second marriages for both of us. When we got married, she had 2 kids from her prior marriage. And so sort of instant family. And then of course, a little bit over a year after we'd been married, David came along. And Dave's gonna be 20 in a couple of weeks. So that's, 20 years ago. And right afterwards, I said to my wife, I said, honey, I've always wanted to learn how to become a real estate investor. Would it be okay with you if I went to this 4-day seminar? So Dave's born in January, and come March timeframe, or just before March, I'm asking my wife permission to go to a 4-day seminar and leave her alone at home with a newborn baby and a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old and or 13-year-old and a 9-year-old. And I'm such a lucky man because he's like, go. And so I went. And while I was there, heard a bunch of speakers, and I invested in some real estate investor education, some real estate material. But the truth of the matter is I didn't use any of it. And the reason why I didn't use any of it was because while I was there, I also met a guy who happened to be from Baltimore, and he allowed me to spend a half day sitting in his car, looking over his shoulder and watching him do what he did. And then we had subsequent phone calls over the phone where he walked me through my first deal. And so at the end of the day, I can say to every person who has struggled just like I did up until 2001. Now understand, I started thinking about real estate investing in 1978. So from 1978 to 2001, what's that, about 23 years? I spent 23 years of my life trying to figure out how to be a real estate investor, and got incredibly frustrated because I'd spent so much money on these books and these tapes and these seminars, and more books and more tapes and more seminars. And no matter how much I invested, no matter how hard I tried, I still couldn't get that stuff to work. And after a while, I began to think, well, maybe there's something wrong with me. And then after a while, I began to think, you know what, maybe there's not something wrong with you. Maybe there's something wrong with this stuff. Maybe the reason why Sherman can't do real estate is because all the training that Sherman's been investing in so far is broken. Maybe it's the training that's broken and not Sherman's ability to learn. And it wasn't until I met this guy named Steve, you guys heard me talk about him the first day we were together, Steve Cook, who of course went on to write the book Life on Air. But at the time we met, he hadn't even written that book. But Steve was a local real estate investor in Baltimore City who, in his own words, barely got out of high school, bought a bar, the bar went bankrupt, put him deeply in debt. And he learned how to do real estate investing by basically reading books at the library, and then just kind of through trial and error. And then connected with some local investors out in Baltimore, and a couple of them let him look over their shoulder, and so on and so forth. And before you know it, by the time I met Steve in 2001, he was already making $600,000 a year as a kid who basically barely got out of high school. And Steve allowed me to sit in his car, look over his shoulder, and that's, quite frankly, what made the difference. That's when the light bulb went on. That's when I'm like, okay, I got it. And so I would say to you and anybody else who's ever attempted to make something happen in real estate and it just hasn't gone anywhere, and you've made a diligent effort, maybe you want to look at what the training material and the training source is, and critique that, as opposed to being too hard on yourself, on yourself. Because my story changed dramatically in 2001 after I met Steve. After Steve showed me the way, showed me the light, and I got my first deal done, oh my gosh, you couldn't stop me. I'm a house of fire. But understanding how we learn, the right way to learn versus the wrong way to learn, can make a huge difference in terms of whether or not you are successful in this business or not. And I would say to you that the dirty little secret that the real estate gurus don't want to tell you is that their stuff doesn't work, and they know it doesn't work, but they don't care, because as long as you have the ability to put stuff on your credit card or pay them money, they're more than happy to sell it to you. So now let me give you a very short little history of how we got to where we got to in the get rich in real estate teaching paradigm, because of the early days and the early roots of this business. So the first place we want to turn to is a guy named Joe Carbo. And you guys probably like, Joe, who? Who's Joe Carbo? Probably somebody you never met. But in 1973, I'm going way back, guys. 1973, Joe Carbo was a son of a Russian immigrant who was working as a tailor. Joe was working as a tailor in Los Angeles, and he went to a seminar on how to make money in mail order. And the person, how to make money, classified ads, and put together pamphlets and books and sell pamphlets and books using classified ads in newspapers. And the person who taught him the seminar said, now make sure you find something that people are interested in spending money on. And the big three are, as you can imagine, how to make money without a lot of work, how to lose weight, right? And how to attract the person of your dreams. In other words, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. No, I'm kidding. No, but all kidding aside, during that era of the 70s, early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, people were struggling. People were looking away for ways to make money. And the fastest, easiest way to make money was to put these classified ads in papers and then turn around and put in full page ads in papers and sell something. And it didn't really necessarily matter whether the something worked, because the price point was so low that even if it didn't work, most people were not going to ask for a refund. So Joe wrote a book. It was called The Lazy Man's Way to Riches. This is the actual ad that he put in the paper. Notice it's, a lot of copy, and then here's the cutout, and then send in a check. And I'm trying to see if it's in here. Oh my gosh. I don't see what the price tag was, but I think it was like $5 to $10. It wasn't a lot of money. He wasn't charging a lot of money for it. But what he did was he basically put together a book. Quite frankly, I actually have a copy of this. I was able to get my hands on a copy of it. It's very expensive on Amazon and eBay because they're almost collector's items now. But at the time it came out, it was only like $2, $3, $4, $5. It's like maybe 40, 50 pages. And at the end of the day, after you've read it, you know what it says? You know what this little pamphlet, this little booklet says? All right. It says the same thing that we talked about yesterday. Basically says the same thing that my buddy David Bach said in his book called Automatic Millionaire. Of course, David does a lot better job and goes into a lot better detail, right? And we talked about this yesterday's session. But basically what's in the book called The Automatic Millionaire, and you guys remember how we talked about this yesterday about just simply the wealth building potential of real estate simply because of the amortizing mortgage? You guys remember that? And David Bach wrote a whole book called The Automatic Millionaire, which basically says buy a house, keep the house. When 30 years is up and you paid off the mortgage, your wealth is increased. And do that a couple more times and you're a wealthy person. Well, this guy, Joe Carbo, basically said the same thing in like a 40-page pamphlet. And he sold it for, I want to say somewhere between $5 and $10. And he just had a really good fancy title. It's called The Lazy Man's Way to Riches. And at the end of the day, what does it say? Go buy real estate because real estate will make you rich. Do you know that Joe Carbo made like $10 million selling this pamphlet? There was no seminar. There was no books and tapes. There was no late night TV. He was just selling a booklet advocating that people invest in real estate because real estate would make you rich. And real estate was the quote unquote lazy man's way to riches. Now, when you read the ad copy, and I'm not going to read it to you, but you guys, by the way, you guys can Google this and download it yourself. And you may want to do that because you may want to keep it in your swipe file. But fundamentally, when you actually read through it, oh, here we go. $9.50. There you go. He's selling it. He was selling the booklet for $10. So here he goes, right here in the copy. What's more, I'm going to ask you to send me $10 for something that will cost me no more than 50 cents. And he wasn't kidding. It was a pamphlet. It wasn't even a full blown book. Send me $10 and I'll send you this 40-page pamphlet on how to get rich. But he doesn't really say anywhere in here what it is. The whole sales copy is just sort of teasing you, talking about he knows this person and they got this amount of stuff and they were able to do this. But nowhere in here does he say, oh, and by the way, what I'm going to teach you is how to buy real estate. He doesn't say that. And so what people realized was, hey, you can sell information that's freely available and get rich just selling information, whether or not the information actually works. selling a little $10 pamphlet called The Lazy Man's Way to Riches, which fundamentally told you, okay, go buy some real estate without actually telling you how, made this guy 10 million bucks. Now, let me ask you a question. If you knew somebody, if you had a neighbor, if you knew somebody who made $10 million selling information on how to get rich in a topic that they didn't even fully comprehend, nor were they actually teaching, would you kind of want to go, hey man, how'd you do that? And would you maybe sort of want to do the same thing? People took a notice to what Joe Carbo was doing and said, you know what? There's money to be made selling information. But here's the deal. Selling information is not the same thing as teaching. Telling you what to do is not the same thing as teaching you how to do it. Does everybody understand that? If you fully understand that, please put it in the chat box. I get it. I understand it. I'll say it one more time. Selling you information on what to do is not the same thing as teaching you how to do. For the person who buys the booklet, pays 10 bucks, they probably thought to themselves, geez, what a waste of 10 bucks. The guy just told me go buy real estate, but he didn't actually teach me how, not in 40 pages. But you know what? It's not worth trying to sue the guy to get my $10 back. I'll just leave it alone. Joe Carbo, on the other hand, is going, you know what? That wasn't bad. I got $10 off this person. And as he said in the ad, it cost me 50 cents to put it together, stick it in an envelope and mail it out. Selling information is extremely profitable. That's what Joe Carbo said to himself. And that was really, quite frankly, the birth of the modern day selling information. But you buying information that tells you what to do without telling you how to do, quite frankly, doesn't make you any better off. Knowing what to do without knowing how to do, quite frankly, can make you frustrated. But it's very, very lucrative for the people who put it together and sell it. And Joe Carbo was the first person to demonstrate that very clearly. Okay? Next up, you may kind of sort of remember this guy. If you got any gray hairs on you, you know this guy. Carleton Sheets. And of course, Carleton Sheets, as the story goes, was an out-of-work Houston engineer, which, probably true. I mean, I don't know for a fact. I actually did interview Carleton Sheets, and we actually have a copy of an interview with Carleton Sheets, and I'd be happy to give it to you. I mean, Carleton came across as a really bright guy, and also, ultimately, he earned a CCIM. But the most important thing, and he was an investor, that is true. But the most important thing was in 1984, Carleton Sheets teamed up with two business persons out of Chicago, Mark Holsek and Donald Strimolo, I think it's how it's pronounced. And they formed a venture, the three of them formed a venture called Professional Education Institute, PEI. And PEI took a snippet, a smidgen, a piece of what Carleton was doing as a real estate investor and put it together in a kit called the No Down Payment Plan, which was basically a program on how to buy real estate, nothing down. Now, was it everything Carleton knew? Of course not. Carleton Sheets was a CCIM. I know what it takes to become a CCIM. It was a small, narrow sliver of the real estate business. And once again, it taught you what you should do, but didn't necessarily teach you how to do it. And Carleton Sheet had infomercials that ran for 25 years. I mean, can you imagine that, running an infomercial for, most infomercials don't last a couple of months. He ran the same series of infomercials, only updated it slightly, for 25 years, selling a $9 course on how to get rich in real estate that was completely 100% home study system. No boot camps, no books, no tapes, no meetings, no coaching, no mentoring, just simply, here it is, go through it, work it out. How do I know that? I bought his stuff 3 times. I bought the original, I bought the new and improved, and then 5 years later, he had a new improved. And I bought it and I stopped in the same place every time. And Carlton Sheets became a multimillionaire pitching his nothing down real estate program. Multimillionaire. There's money in selling information. But that doesn't mean, as the quote unquote consumer of information, that it actually works. Nikki says, I have his program. Dee says, yes, I remember. Yeah, by the way, those of you who have Carlton Sheets, how much money did you ever make off of using Carlton Sheets and stuff? I'm just curious. I know what the answer is for me. Nothing. Dorothy says zero, nothing, zero. Yeah. Now here's the deal. Oh, thank God. I mean, God, look how many people bought Carlton Sheets. Oh my gosh, I thought it was just me. So now that we all get together for the Carlton Sheets, what do we call it? The Carlton Sheets recovery group. The simple truth of the matter is, and I'm not here to bash the man. The man's dead, for crying out loud. He died, a number of years ago. But what I'm saying is, he never sold anything with the intention of you actually learning something. He sold you something that basically it sounded good. You thought it was good. You paid $9. You got what you paid for. Now, I don't mean to be a little cynical, and I don't mean to be cynical, but the simple truth of the matter is there's huge money in selling information. But that doesn't mean that the information that you have purchased is going to actually work. Because any kind of a home study system or books and tapes or pamphlet that tells you what to do without telling you how to do it is ultimately not going to work. But that doesn't mean that these guys aren't selling millions of dollars of this information. And so Carlton was sort of king of the roost. And then along came, this guy. And he literally changed the get rich in real estate education business. I mean, changed it like nobody else has done ever since. I'm, of course, talking about Russ Whitney. And if you know Russ Whitney's story, he was on TV for a number of years. Russ is sort of in a semi-retired state now. He's still amongst the living, and he does have a website. I had an interaction with Russ Whitney that cost me $30,000. I'll just leave it at that. Russ really did change the get rich in real estate information business, because while Joe Carbo and many of the people who followed him or copied him, and Carlton Sheets and many of the people who followed him and copied him, both Joe Carbo and Carlton Sheets, they were selling information, they were selling books. I mean, like Robert Allen, and I didn't even bother to mention Robert Allen. Robert Allen had 10 books on the New York Times bestselling list were all about buying real estate, nothing down. And in many regards, it's kind of like Joe Carbo. But those guys didn't have seminars, they didn't have training. Russ Whitney was the first person to say, you know what? I bet you that if we do live events, we can probably charge a whole lot more than $9 or $10. And it was really Russ Whitney who was the creator of the concept that pretty much every single other get rich in real estate guru follows today. And this is what I want to share with you, and this is what I want to talk about, because you probably, well, you may not know who, I'm sure you don't know who Joe Carbo is. And you probably aren't old enough to remember Carlton Sheets, except for a handful of us. You probably have experienced some kind of an event, a get rich in real estate event, that was the brainchild of Russ Whitney. Even if it wasn't delivered by Russ Whitney, you were experiencing what I would call the Russ Whitney boot camp model. And it kind of sort of, well, before I get into it, the quick background. Russ Whitney, 1992, creates Win Systems through a series of name changes and merges into a publicly traded vehicle. Win Inc. becomes Whitney Information Network, which becomes Whitney Education Group, ultimately Migrant, and then ultimately Migrant. Okay, then ultimately becomes, it's not ultimately Migrant, it becomes Tigrant. And I don't know if that's a typo or not, but it ultimately becomes Tigrant Inc., which I think some of you may or may not have heard of. You probably don't know Tigrant by the name Tigrant. You probably know it by its public-facing name, which is Rich Dad. Anybody here ever heard of Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Education? Okay, Rich Dad Education is basically Russ Whitney, and I'll get to that in a second. Okay, Tigrant, because it's been a publicly traded animal since 1998, you can actually pull up information about the company and the profitability of the company where you can't get access to information on privately held companies like Fortune Builders. But fortune builders and many of the A&E stars who come around doing the sort of traveling cavalcade, they're all doing it based on the Russ Whitney model. And because Russ Whitney took his company public, we know for a fact that in 2006, Tigrant Inc., formerly known as Whitney Education Group, did $250 million. You guys hearing me? $250 million in annual revenue by selling information, seminars on how to get rich in real estate, otherwise known as real estate investor boot camps. Anybody here ever been to a real estate investor boot camp besides me? A 3-day event at a hotel to teach you how to get, okay? You can thank Russ Whitney for that because he is the father of the boot camp technique, the boot camp style of selling get rich in real estate education. Now, here's what you need to know, okay? Russ Whitney partnered with Robert Kiyosaki. Before Robert Kiyosaki met Russ Whitney, Robert Kiyosaki had a series of books, and Robert Kiyosaki was on the speaker circuit. But he had what is affectionately known in the industry as no back end, meaning he had all these people who were buying his books. They were buying his books in bookstores. And anybody here who's ever read Rich Dad, or as I like to say, Rich Dad, Poor Dad plus Cash Flow Quadrant, because originally they were one book, and Sharon Lechter said separate them into 2 books. You know the story. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and Cash Flow Quadrant, which were originally one book, was a book that was designed to sell a board game. Robert Kiyosaki wanted to sell this board game called Cash Flow 101 for $200. And that was Robert Kiyosaki's concept as to how he was going to get rich. He was going to sell this $200 board game, and he created the book to sell the board game. Problem is, people like books. People like his book. I like his book. But nobody's necessarily going to run around buy a $200 book. I mean, what do board games cost? You guys all know Parker Brothers, Monopoly, Chutes and Ladders. A board game's supposed to be like $10. Who's going to pay? Who the right man is going to pay $250 for a board game? And that was his problem. So he had all these people who had read his book. He had all these people who were followers, who were following him around. And he's like, how do I make money off of this? And somehow he and Russ Whitney connected. I don't know how it actually happened, but they connected. And Russ Whitney said, tell you what, Robert, let's do this. Why don't you let me use your Rich Dad label, and I'll pay you a royalty, and I will basically take my Russ Whitney seminars and now call them Rich Dad seminars. Now, I'm not going to get rid of the Russ Whitney seminars. I'll still do the Russ, but I will also come into town 1 week later, and I'll do Rich Dad seminars, fundamentally with the same teachers, the same trainers, the same coaches, but we'll put the Rich Dad label on top of it. You guys with me? Rich Dad education is Russ Whitney education. It's the food coming out of the same kitchen. Like, you ever been to a place and it had one storefront and another restaurant, and you're like, man, the food tastes the same. It's like, yeah, because it's all coming out of the same kitchen. That's exactly what Russ Whitney did. He entered into a partnership with Robert Kiyosaki. And around the same time that they rolled out Rich Dad Education, which is the educational wing, that's the joint venture between Robert Kiyosaki and Russ Whitney, Robert Kiyosaki paid Donald Trump $250,000 to co-write a book with him. And I think the title was called We Want You to Be Rich or something like that. And he was going around the country with Donald Trump doing seminars promoting the book and getting a lot of publicity and a lot of buzz. And Russ Whitney said to Robert Kiyosaki, hey, how about approaching your friend Donald Trump, and let's see if we can do the same thing with Donald Trump's name and Donald Trump's brand that we did for Rich Dad. My understanding, and I'm giving this third hand, so I could be totally wrong on this, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'll just say it right up front, and I'll apologize. But I heard Russ Whitney say this. I'm pretty sure I heard Russ Whitney say this. They approached Donald Trump. Trump said, I love the idea, but what do I need you for? And then proceeded to take Russ Whitney's idea, steal Russ Whitney's idea, and create Trump University. So even Trump University was based on this boot camp concept that Russ Whitney created. So you got Whitney Education, you got Rich Dad, you got Trump University, all fundamentally doing the same thing. And then this kid named Than Merrill went to a boot camp sponsored by a woman named Robin Thompson and learned how to fix and flip houses, and then got himself on A&E TV when the early days of the reality fix and flip shows, and decided, you know what? I too want to follow the Russ Whitney model and promote and sell 3-day boot camps to teach people how to get rich in real estate. And Than Merrill and Russ Whitney connected, and Russ Whitney mentored him. Again, I'm getting this third hand from Russ himself, and mentored Than Merrill and helped him with this company called Fortune Builders. So now all of a sudden, you got Whitney Education, you got Rich Dad, you got Donald Trump, and you got Than Merrill all doing the same thing. Because it's all based on the concept originally developed by Russ Whitney. And it kind of sort of looks like this. Oh, one more thing. Anybody here ever heard of a guy named Ron Legrand? Anybody here ever heard of Ron Legrand? Yes, yes. So Ron Legrand had a company doing kind of sort of the same thing that Russ Whitney was doing. It was called SDI Ron Legrand. That was the name of the company. And unfortunately, he didn't do it quite as good as Russ, and he wound up going bankrupt. And guess who bought Ron Legrand's SDI company out of bankruptcy? Anybody want to guess? Russ Whitney. So at one point in time, Russ Whitney had Whitney Education / Tigrant, right? Rich Dad Education, SDI Legrand, and he would literally come to town 3 weeks out of the month. First is Whitney Education, then a week later is Rich Dad Education, then a week later is SDI Ron Legrand, and then a week later, and I mean, selling the same stuff. And as a result, Tigrant / Whitney Education did $250 million a year. And the reason why we know this is because Tigrant and Whitney Education is a publicly traded. You can go to the SEC and see their annual reports. It's out there. It's out there for the public to see. This is not, you know, it's like it's hiding in plain sight. Now, let's just very quickly back of the napkin do the math. If he's selling $250 million a year worth of boot camps, and on average, people are paying about $5,000, which is roughly about 1 or 2 boot camps, because that's what most people, some people took it all, some people took 1. But let's say on average that most people are basically investing in about 2 boot camps. So you take 250 million divided by 5,000. That means that Russ Whitney was running 100,000 students a year. 100,000 students a year through these 3-day boot camps. Hundreds of thousands of people every year investing in so-called get rich in real estate education through the format of a 3-day boot camp, whether it's taught by Rich Dad or Tigrant Whitney Education or Ron Legrand. $250 million. Now that's just what Russ Whitney was doing. And we only know about what Russ Whitney was doing because Russ Whitney's company was a publicly traded company. But there were other folks, other guys either stealing or borrowing or interpreting or using the same Russ Whitney format. You had Than Merrill, who was the first of the A&E stars, who created Fortune Builders, hired Russ Whitney as a coach mentor, according to Russ Whitney. He was doing it. Armando Montalongo. Again, I mean, I don't know these guys intimately, but you can sort of Google and see what they were up to. And pretty much every one of the A&E fixing flipping stars after Than and Armando entered into contracts with a company out of Utah, and they were doing the same thing. But the basic core get rich in real estate model that the out-of-town gurus are pumping is this 3-day boot camp. And if you're sitting there going, yeah, Sherman, I know exactly what you're talking about because I got snookered. Don't feel bad. If you listen to every one of the successful members here at Real Investors, they'll tell you the same thing. We all invested. We all spent money. We all got taken by the out-of-town gurus. When we listened to Howard Johnson 2 nights ago, he talked about having spent $30,000. I don't know if Jesse's here. Jesse has told the story a number of times how he spent it somewhere close to 20, 30,000. Stephanie Terry spent 20, 30,000. Russ Whitney got me for 30,000. We've all been there. So don't feel embarrassed like, oh my gosh, I'm afraid to say that I spent a lot of money, you know, and whether you spend a nickel or you spent 20, 30, 40, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, every single one of these guys and gals, there's women out there doing this too, they're using the exact same formula, this boot camp formula. And the simple fact of the matter is that it doesn't really matter who's pumping it or pitching it. Fundamentally, it doesn't matter because the problem is not with these, I'll call them all-stars, right? The problem is the boot camp. The whole concept of I'm a teacher how to get rich in real estate for a 3-day seminar is absolutely positively ludicrous. The whole format of a 3-day boot camp doesn't work. And it was never designed to work because you made an investment going, oh, they're going to teach me how to become a real estate investor. And they're on the other side going, you know what? If we package this stuff up, do it in a hotel ballroom, in and out in 3 days, we'll collect 3 G's, ka-ching, ka-ching, and then we can go on to the next one. Oh, by the way, did I mention that just Russ Whitney and Tigrant did $250 million a year in boot camps? And that was for many years. 100,000 students paying on average $5,000, which would have been 1 or 2 boot camps every single year. Now, stop and ask this question. I'm totally serious, and some of y'all about to have an aha moment. If Russ Whitney, AKA Whitney Education, AKA Rich Dad Education, AKA SDI Ron Legrand, publicly traded, information is freely available, was teaching, I don't even want to use the word teaching. If they had somewhere around 100,000 students and Trump University maybe had half as many, and Than Merrill, Armando Montalongo, all the other A&E stars, you know, flipping Vegas, flipping this, flipping that, altogether, let's say maybe 200,000 people a year are going through this boot camp model. What percentage of them would you expect to be successful? And I'd like for you to type that in the chat box. What percentage, if it really does work, if this model really works, if people really did learn how to become real estate investors, what percentage would you expect to see? I see 10%. I see, I don't know what 105 means because that's not a percentage. I see 2%. Okay, so I see 10%, 5%. Okay, let's do the math. Let's do the math. If you take 200,000 and multiply that by 10%, what does that look like? You guys got your calculators, your phones? If you take 200,000, multiply that by 0.02, that's 2%, that's 4,000 people. At 2%, that's 4,000 people. At 1%, that's 2,000 people. At 10%, it's 20,000 people. Are we all kind of in agreement in those terms? If it's 10%, it's 20. If it's 2%, it's 4. If it's 1%, it's 2,000. Are we all in agreement on that? Yes? Yeah? Now, think about this. If the boot camp model really worked you'd kind of expect to see somewhere between 2,000 and 20,000 people every year talking about their success with that model. And let's assume for a second Russ Whitney was out there for 20 years. Heck, let's just say 10. 2,000 a year or 20,000 a year over a 10-year period. That's like 20 to 200,000 people. Armando Montalongo, Dan Merrill. Has anybody here ever watched one of those teleseminars, or that's not the right word, I've seen an ad or a TV ad where they're talking about, hey, so-and-so's coming to town, they're gonna teach you how to be a real estate investor. And they almost always have the little clip, the little success story, the testimonial. Have you seen 2,000 people talking about how that system worked? Anybody here seen 2,000 people saying, you need to come to this seminar because this thing? No. What do you see? 5 people. The same 5 people over and over and over and over. Now, I'm not saying that this stuff never works. But the simple fact of the matter is, if you actually just sit and do the math, the success rate, quite frankly, is like 1/10 of 1%. It's minuscule. So how can you look me in the eye and tell me boot camps work? If boot camps work, where's the proof in the pudding? Where are the success stories? There should be thousands, if not tens of thousands, of people who've been successful with that model. And yet I don't see it. Do you guys see it? I don't see it. I just don't see it. So you say, well, Sherman, if people aren't being successful, then why do these guys keep on doing it? Did I mention that Whitney Education Group, AKA Tigrant, made $250 million a year selling people boot camps? 250, like if you were making $250 million a year selling people stuff, why would you stop? Anybody, why would you stop? And the answer is you wouldn't. Unless the government shut you down and made you stop. And oh, by the way, that's what we've been seeing over the past several years. The federal government through the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, shutting down many of these operators and telling them, you're selling stuff based on promises that you don't have any proof. And if you have ever fallen into this boot camp thing, understand, it wasn't you. Y'all seen the model? There's some kind of an ad, maybe the ad's in the paper, maybe the ad's on the radio. More and more lately, the ads are on Facebook and it says, hey, come to the free session. And you come to the free session. And when you're at the free session, they talk about investing in boot camps. And what's the boot camp? It's a 3-day event. You sign up for the 3-day event, you take the 3-day event, you pay for the 3-day event. And then when the first time you have a question and you want to talk to the trainer, the teacher, because you know, for goodness sake, you're not talking to Robert Kiyosaki. You take Rich Dad Education, you'll never see Robert Kiyosaki. When people were going through Trump University, they knew they were never going to see Donald Trump. Even though in the ads he said, I'll be there. Yeah, we ever heard that one before? Trump saying he'll be there and he's not. They knew they weren't going to see Russ Whitney. So they get on the phone, call that toll-free number, the support line. And you know what happened when they call the toll-free number support line? They got a boiler room. Y'all know what a boiler room is? Anybody here know what a boiler room is? Put it in the chat box if you know what a boiler room is. What's a boiler room? What is it? What is it? It's a sales floor. That's right, a call center. It's a sales floor call. In other words, people were calling a toll-free number to get help. And they got a salesperson who said, okay, tell me what's going on. Okay, here's the answer. You need to buy another boot camp. So they buy another boot camp, go to another boot camp, get home, try to use the material. And the person said, well, okay, I'm having problems. So, oh, you need another boot camp. And they would string together 3, 4, 5 boot camps. And if anybody or any point in time you push back and said, hey, wait a minute, fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, shame on you. I just went to a boot camp and I'm calling you for help and you're telling me you need another boot camp. And at that point, they say, okay, we've done all we can do for you. Now go find your local expert. Well, guys, I got news for you. This boot camp model is designed from the very beginning to do one thing and one thing only. Anybody want to guess what that is? What is the boot camp model designed to do? Anybody want to guess? Put it in. What is it designed to do? Yes, make money, but what else? What else? Yes, thank you, Alicia. Get your money. The whole purpose of a boot camp is to extract money from your pocket. It's not about you learning the real estate business, because you're never going to learn real estate sitting in a classroom for 3 days. It's not going to happen. And that's my underlying message to you. That, to me, I'm just giving it to you. That should be your aha moment. Boot camps don't work. And if you stop and think about it, when's the last time you ever saw a doctor, a dentist, a lawyer, your kid's elementary school teacher, and you said to them, hey, tell me a little bit about your education? And your child's 3rd grade teacher says, well, I went to this boot camp last weekend, and that's why I'm qualified to teach your kid 3rd grade. And you're grabbing your child and running out of the classroom going, what the hell is this? When's the last time you sat in a dentist chair and the dentist gives you a prognosis and you say, okay, well, before you start pulling all these teeth and putting screws in my mouth, just give me one more time, what's your experience level with this? Well, I did go to a 3-day seminar at the Holiday Inn last weekend. Wait a minute, you're gonna start drilling on my mouth. And the only thing you know about what you're about to do is you went to a 3-day boot camp? You go to a doctor and you get the diagnosis, God forbid, that you never want to hear. He says you got to have surgery. You say, well, okay, I might want to get a second opinion, but doc, tell me one more time how many of these surgeries you've done and what's your background? Oh, well, I went to a 3-day seminar at the Radisson. It was good. I remember half of it. So why do we believe that a 3-day boot camp is really going to teach us how to become a real estate investor? Hopefully, hopefully y'all didn't even need me to give you this lecture tonight. And I regret the fact that I've gone 15 minutes longer than I said, because I thought I was going to get this thing wrapped up. But the bottom line, if there's any doubt in your mind, is that boot camps don't work. And if they did, considering the amount of money that the folks who do boot camps make and the number of people that they put through their seminars, you would expect to see thousands, tens of thousands of positive testimonials. Not a handful, not 5 or 10. Like if you ever watch the infomercial, they show the same 5 testimonials. Yeah, again, what's the untold story? In many cases, the people who give the testimony, they've already gone through other kinds of training before they showed up for the boot camp. They already knew what they were doing in many cases. But the bottom line is this: a 3-day boot camp is not designed to teach you how to become a real estate investor. A 3-day boot camp is designed to make the promoter, the person who's putting it together, rich, because they're giving you information and telling you what you need to do is a far cry different from telling you how to actually do it. So as we start to get into the lessons and start to get into the training, I've had a couple of people, and the reason why I'm sort of, I'm ranting a little, yes, I am, But the reason why I'm telling you this is because I want you to know the truth. I don't want there to be a quote unquote dirty little secret. Okay? I want you to know the truth. And the truth is boot camps don't work. Well, if boot camps don't work, what does? This is what works. Day 3, getting into, and again, pretty soon we're going to start rolling up our sleeves and actually doing some stuff. But I want folks to understand the way you truly learn this real estate business, and this is what I call real estate 101, the fundamentals, is training that looks like this. Let's talk about what does work. And understand this, I've been a full-time real estate investor for a little over 20 years, and I've been teaching people how to do this around the same amount of time. We have literally, I went through the numbers the other day, we have literally taught, because we have been predominantly local, real investors, and what I've done personally has been predominantly local. We've taught about 2,400 people over the years. That's over a 20-year period. That's roughly what? About 100 or plus so people a year. Looking back at the testimonials that we've received, the letters we received, the emails we received, I think out of 23, call it 2,400 people, we have somewhere on the order of 500 people who have given us success stories. Now, there are people who've been successful who haven't told us, but I'll put my 500 out of 2,400 up against 10 out of 200,000 every day of the month, every day of the week. Who got a calculator? What's that? What, as a percentage basis, what does that look like? 500 people successful. Let's just round it up. 500 people out of 2,500. What's that look like? What is that? 20%? 25%? I'll put our numbers up against anybody who's buying late night TV commercials or Facebook ads and trying to sell you on a book. I'll put my numbers against theirs, and I will run circles. Real investors will run circles around those guys. So what is it that we're doing that works when what they're doing is doomed from the outset to fail? It's this. If you are going to invest in real estate investor education, if you are truly going to learn real estate investing, in my opinion, this list is what you should be learning. And whether you do it at Real Investors, you do it with somebody else, do it with a local, I don't care where you go, just stop being lied to. Anybody who comes at you talking about a 3-day event, boot camp, is lying. And many of them know it. That's not how you learn real estate. So how do you learn it? Number one, having the chance to look over the shoulder of others who are actually doing it. That kind of sort of means you're either going to be hopping on a plane every week or you're going to find somebody local. Of the two choices, I'd rather pick finding somebody local. But literally having the opportunity to look over the shoulder of somebody's actually doing it. An opportunity that you have a hands-on environment where you're actually forced, somebody getting you out of your comfort zone, like I'm going to do with you guys over the next couple of weeks. That forcing of you having to do is where the real learning actually begins. And one of the reasons why boot camps are flawed from the outset is you're only at a boot camp in a hotel for 3 days. There is no actual hands-on doing. There's nobody saying to you, okay, now that I taught you this, let's go out in the field and actually do it. It doesn't happen. You're sitting in a ballroom with 400 or 500 other people. You're being lectured to for 3 days straight, and then they send you home. And the first time you actually attempt to do something, you're calling a toll-free number and told you got to buy another boot camp. That, from the outset, is flawed. It doesn't work. Spending time with somebody who's doing the business locally, and the person says, okay, here's how you do it. You got it. Okay, now you do it. And them forcing you to do it, that getting you out of your comfort zone is where your learning actually begins. Getting clear instruction from a knowledgeable source. Guys, this is one of the reasons why I spent 2 days going over that, just a simple timesheet. hopefully, through both group interaction and one-on-one interaction, giving clear instruction on here's how you should do this. Because by the time I get to here's how to fill out a real estate contract, I want your undivided attention, and I want to know that what I'm teaching, you're actually learning. And the only way that that can happen is that we have an interaction together. So getting you guys on board in Facebook and doing little simple tasks on Facebook and learning how to work together on a simple task means by the time we get to a 20-page contract that I want you to fill out, it's a piece of cake. And I won't have anybody going, well, I can't get on Facebook. I can't upload to Facebook. I don't know what you're saying. Like, we're doing this hard stuff at the outset up front so we can be ready to be running when it's time to be running. And I don't want the first time that I'm talking about how to fill out a 20-page contract and walking you through it and then instructing how to do it and have you look over my shoulder, then you look over. I don't want that to be the first time we've ever done anything on Facebook together or uploaded homework together. Let's crack the code with something simple like, here's my daily schedule and my aha moments. But getting clear instruction from a knowledgeable person who's forcing you to get out of your comfort zone and getting you to actually do a task. I don't care whether we're talking about real estate, Bitcoin, stock market. That's how you learn. That is a model, a paradigm, a framework, a structure for actually learning. That's what makes us so much different than the guys who want to sell you a 3-day boot camp. Demonstrating how something should actually work. Did anybody learn anything yesterday from watching the case study where I was talking about we need to move the framework, the framing for the concrete so we have a bigger pad in the back of the house? Did anybody learn anything from that watching that video? And anybody remember why I said to the young contractor, and the funny thing, and I didn't even mention this yesterday, David, who's my 20-year-old son, was the project manager on that house so he could learn how to manage a contractor. The contractor, Michael, who's 10 years older than me, sent his 30-year-old son so that his 30-year-old son could learn how to work with an investor. So Owen was actually the contractor's son. And both of them are learning by having me instruct David and Michael instruct Owen how the business actually works. And so when I got out there, these two young kids are looking at this sort of 9-foot by 8-foot concrete pad that was about to get poured, thinking that's an adequate deck. And I'm like, no, that's not an adequate. There's no room for the grill. There's no room for the patio furniture. Move that sucker out. And we were moving. Like, did anybody learn anything by watching me just have that little interaction with the contractor and the contractor's son? That's what I'm talking about. And anybody who's ever been to a boot camp knows that doesn't happen. It just doesn't. Now, just wait until we're actually able to get together in small groups and get out in the field. How much more learning is going to take place when you get a chance to actually be out in the field with me? I can't have 80 some people walking through a house today, not right now, but I can certainly have 5 to 8, 4 in the back, 4 in the front. Anybody here like the idea of spending some time out in the field with me, watching me actually manage a contractor, watching me actually put a deal together, learning from me as I actually do the thing? Anybody like that idea? You do say I like it in the chat box. Okay, where does that ever happen at a boot camp? Literally going to a property, walking through, it doesn't. But if you're going to learn this business, there has to be this kind of interaction where not only are you looking over somebody's shoulder who's actually in the business doing it, but them then turning around and say, okay, now it's your turn. What do you think? What do you think we should do here? And getting you engaged, getting you out of your comfort zone, getting you into the game. That's where the learning actually takes place. As my mentor, Jim Rouse, said to me, you'll never learn real estate sitting in the classroom. You learn this business by doing it. And I've modified a little bit of what Mr. Rouse to say, you learn this business by hanging out with people who are doing it, watching them do it, and then having them turn to you and say, okay, it's your turn now. In a totally safe, you're not going to fail, you're not going to fall environment. But if you don't have a situation like that, you're not going to learn the business. And so wasting time, energy, money on boot camps, on books and tapes, on training that doesn't actually get you involved and get you out in the field, that's a setup from the beginning. That unfortunately is the dirty little secret of this real estate game. You got to connect with people who are actually doing it and look and learn, and then have them turn to you and say, okay, your turn now. I want you to do this, because that's how the learning process takes place. Having time to actually walk through a task. They cram so much into those 3-day things. They literally take, let me ask this. Anybody here ever been to college, have a kid in college, or knows that a college is down the street? Anybody? If you have, say me. Say me. Put in the chat box me. If you've been to college, have a kid. What is the average length of time that a class takes place at any university in the country? I don't care if you're talking about Howard, Harvard, Morehouse, Towson, University of Maryland. I don't care. What's the average length of time that a class takes place? 90 minutes, 45 minutes, about an hour. Some cases, an hour and a half, right? And what is the average number of months that that class is taught? 1, 2, 3, 3 months, 4 months. Okay. At the university level, community college, Harvard, I don't care, they have something called a semester. And the average length of time for most semesters at an American college is 3 months, 90 days. And it doesn't matter whether you're going to class 3 times a week, 2 times a week, or 1 time. A semester is 3 months. So Sherman, why can't a learning period of time be 3 days, like a boot camp? I don't know. But last time I checked, Harvard, Towson, Howard, UMBC, Bowie State University, University of Maryland, and on and on and on and on and on and on use a 3-month semester. Is it because we can't teach it faster? Sure you can, except the student may need a little bit of time to actually break down and perform the task. And if it's really going to be taught, a teacher's not just going to sit there and lecture. A teacher's going to say to the student, okay, tell me what you thought you heard me say. It's called a quiz. Tell me what I have been saying. It's called a test. Demonstrate to me that you actually have some proficiency. It's called a midterm or final exam. I did it. I showed you how to do it. Now you do it. It's called a lab. Tell me what you think should be done. It's called a thesis. And for hundreds of years, Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard, Penn, Princeton, Stanford, any academic institution that you can think of that is actually in the business of training and teaching, the lesson is not done in days. The lesson is done over months, typically 2, 3, or 4 months. And the student comes to class once or twice a week or 3 times a week over a period of, why? So the student and the teacher have enough time to break down the task and the student can truly demonstrate, okay, I got it. But when's the last time you heard of Harvard conveying a degree, Penn conveying a degree, Howard conveying, that you were able to get in a 3-day boot camp? Anybody? Anybody got a PhD you got in a 3-day boot camp? MBA? Master's degree? Undergraduate? No! 3-day boot camps are not about teaching. 3-day boot camps are about the person putting on the boot camp, getting your money and going, okay, there we go. But real learning takes time. Results, you should expect to get results from whatever class you're taking. Constructive supportive feedback that reinforces the doing. Opportunity to demonstrate that you know that you heard what the professor said and you can actually demonstrate, okay, I got it. Support network. A support network of people to help you get through if you got questions, because sometimes you don't feel comfortable going to the professor, but you want to be able to turn to another student and go, did you understand what the guy said? Yeah, I understood. Okay, can we get together and talk about it? Yeah, sure. In fact, there's a group of us that get together every other day or every day, whatever, and have a little study group. to make sure that we're staying on top of it. And we actually are learning it. Short-term reward system that's not just about money. Look, I know you guys want to get rich in real estate. You want to make a lot of money in real estate. You're going to make a lot of money in real estate. But maybe you want a couple of rewards along the way before the cash actually starts flowing in. Built in. And then, of course, ultimately, some kind of a monetary reward for actually doing the thing. Because this business is all about, if you do what you're supposed to do, you should expect to get results, and you should also expect to get paid. As I said to you guys a couple of days ago, my number one goal as your teacher, your instructor, is to help you get from where you are and help you get to where you want to be and be that guide. Well, that's not just coming from me. That's why Real Investors exists. And we're having this little conversation tonight because I want people to understand. I'm here for the next 20 some days to teach you how to get your first deal done and put some cash in your pocket. But if you want me to, if you want us to, Real Investors can show you how to make money in every facet of the business. Tomorrow night, I'm going to get into, okay, here's the 13 different ways to make money in real estate. I kind of like for you guys to go, gee, that sounds good, and that sounds good, and that sounds interesting. I want to try that. Now, where do I go to learn it? And before you even start thinking about, okay, where do I go to learn it? I want you to know, this is why Real Investors exists. Because every single one of us who's engaged and committed and part of the Real Investors leadership team, we've been ripped off by the boot camps. We know what the alternative is, and we were sick and tired of being taken advantage of. And we fully understood you don't learn jack in a 3-day boot camp. The real way you learn how to become a real estate investor, a real investor, is you connect with people who are actually doing the business and get them to show you how. And that requires commitment on the part of the teacher, and that requires commitment on the part of the student. There's a reason why Think Realty did a full-page article on our Real Investor Academy and called me as the dean the wealth creator, because we have a 25% success ratio. You're like, Sherman, why should it be 100? Because not everybody who walks in the classroom is willing to do what we ask them to do. But you compare our track record over 20 years to any of these folks who are promoting boot camps and books and tapes, we run circles around them. Because our methodology, our paradigm, our way of doing things works. And there's not a single thing that you may want to do in the real estate business that you can't find somebody at Real Investors who can help you, show you, and get you to where you want to be. My job in the next 20 days is to get you to the first deal. But we're going to get to that first deal here and done, and I'm going to show you how to automate the process. And you're going to turn to me on the 22nd day and go, okay, what's next? So we're kind of getting this conversation out of the way up front. What's next is you figure out which of these strategies I'm going to talk about tomorrow that you want to do next. And then connect with somebody inside of Real Investors who can show you how. Because that's what we do. I liken a boot camp to a hookup. Sherman, are you supposed to be saying that? So hook up. I don't think the people who come to Real Investors want to hook up. I think what most people are looking for is to connect with a family that's going to help them through every facet of their real estate investor journey. And that, my friends, is what you're really on. You're on a journey. And you may be feeling like you're at the starting point. You may be feeling like, hey, I've been at the starting point for years, but you have dreams, you have goals, you have aspirations. And quite frankly, the only thing that has been missing is a group of people who are actually doing what you want to do, who are committed to helping you get to wherever it is that you want to get. And that's what Real Investors is all about. I got a lot of questions from you guys live yesterday, the day before in the chat room saying, Sherman, you're going to talk about this, you're going to talk about that, and how do we do this and how do we do that? I'm like, whoa, hold on. This particular class is about getting your first deal done. That was the commitment we made to each other. That's what I said from the outset. I'm not going to tell you all I know about how to rehab a house, because that's not what this class is. I'm not going to teach you all that I know about how to raise money. I'm not going to teach you how to raise $1 million or $4 million or $10 million, which I've done, because that's not what this class is. I'm not going to teach you how to go and get into commercial real estate, how to buy a $3 million or excuse me, $2.5 million self-storage facility, fix it up, turn it around, refinance and pull out $3 million like Steve and members of the commercial real estate team did this past year. Because that's not what this class is. But that doesn't mean we don't have classes and mentoring and coaching to answer those questions. It's just not what this 21-day class is. This is about the first deal. And I know you have bigger dreams and bigger aspirations and bigger goals than just getting past that first deal. But we got to get the first deal done first. But you can sleep well knowing that when we are done getting the first deal done, at Real Investors, we can also show you how to get the other stuff done if you want us to. And that chart I gave you a couple minutes ago about you should be looking for this, I don't care whether you decide you want to continue your real estate journey with us or somebody else, but just make sure you're not giving your money to the people who are ripping you off. Connect with people who can actually help you on your real estate investor journey and be like a second family, not somebody who just wants a 3-day hookup. And when you call to go, hey, what happened? You know, what did you for me? Oh yeah, you gotta give me some more money and come see me again for 3 days. Who wants that? But that's what those other guys represent. Don't do that. At Real Investors, our whole infrastructure, our whole program is about teaching people how to do it and then turning the students into teachers. So it becomes self-perpetuating. We have 7 different levels that represent your progress along your real estate investor journey. Level 1 all the way up through level 7. But I would dare say that the most significant level is that level 4. Because we figure that by the time you have closed 4 deals, I'm gonna teach you how to get the first one over the next 20 days that we got left, or 19 days now. But you're gonna get that first deal done. I absolutely guarantee it. And then you're gonna get 2, and then 3, and then 4. And when you hit level 4, we make a big deal out of that. We have a ceremony called the Black Jacket Ceremony. And when you earn your black jacket, you've done 4 deals. You're walking down the street with some swag. Heck, we got people got black jackets, they're wearing them in July. I'm like, dude, that's a fall winter jacket. I know, but it's my level 4 jacket. That's when we tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, listen, it's time for you to start giving back. And the best way for you to get back is you've got some expertise and we want you to start sharing that expertise. Every one of our investors of the year has achieved level 4 status, and every one of our level 4 and above real investors at one point were students and now they're teachers. Every one of them. So yes, I'm gonna teach you how to get your first deal done with the 19 days we got left. Don't fret, don't stress. We said it's a 21-day journey. We're in the 3rd day. But I wanted to take a little bit of time to say to you guys, hey, look, number one, if you've been struggling with this real estate thing and you've been investing and you're sitting there going, you know, God, Sherman, there's something wrong with me. No, there's nothing wrong with you. You've just connected with the wrong people. You thought they wanted to be your family and you realized they just wanted a 3-day hookup. But now that you've connected with the right family, now that you're part of the Real Investor, I want you to understand there's more to come. And so when I say to you over the next remaining days, hey, look, those are great questions, but that's not what this class is all about. Don't be upset with me going, well, Sherman blew me off. You know, I had a really solid question about raising money, and I had a really solid question about owning property. And he talked about, you know, owning property was the road to wealth. And I asked about owning property, and he didn't want to answer the question. No, it's not that I don't want to answer the question. I'm like, I don't want to answer the question right now because we have coaching, mentoring, classes, one-on-one. We have other training to help answer those questions. But it doesn't make any sense to spend any time during the class talking about how to get your first deal done, talking about how to do your 10th deal, or your 100th, or your 5th. And there's going to be different skills you're going to need as you progress as an investor, as a real investor. And anybody who's telling you they're going to teach you everything you need to know, the A to Z in a 3-day boot camp, that they are lying to you. And I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to be a part of that big lie. I'm telling you the truth. This real estate investor journey is a little bit different for each person. And the only thing that we all have in common who are in this class right now, other than me and a couple others, is you're struggling to get your first deal done. And I'm gonna teach you how to get your first deal done. And I'm gonna teach you how to put it on autopilot. And as soon as you get it done, you're like, oh, well, Ben, that was easy. Why did I make it such a big deal? And I'm like, yeah, you just need somebody to show you how. And you're gonna have other questions about, what do I do next? I don't want you to have to go anywhere other than Real Investors to help you implement what you should do next. So we're kind of having that conversation now, get it out of the way, so we can start getting to the good stuff. Like, how do I get, like, what do I need to do next to get my first deal done? That's what we're going to be doing over the remaining 19 days. But I want you guys to understand, when I say to you, great question, but we're not going to talk about it now, I'm not blowing you off. I'm simply saying, hold that question until after we get the first deal done. And then I'll be more than happy to share with you who can help you get into assisted living, who can help you get your first apartment building, who at Real Investors can help you build your portfolio, who at Real Investors can help you hire your first property manager, who at Real Investors can help you set up this system and that system and this thing and that thing, and learn about overages and learn about this, learn about that, get your first hotel deal, because everybody inside of Real Investors has done what you want to do. And we're here to help you. But we got to get that first deal done. So please don't be offended when I'm like, hold on, hold that for a minute. We're going to get to that in a couple of days. Nope, that's not what this class is about. We got you. Everywhere you want to go in life as a real estate investor, we've already been there, and we're doing it. And most of us are doing it on a daily basis. We're not going to let you walk out the door wondering what comes next. That's all I'm saying. We got you covered. Okay? So everybody take a deep breath, breathe in, let it out. And let's just focus for the next 19 days on getting that first deal out of the way, so we can come back and have that conversation and get to everything else. Is that okay? If that's okay with you, put that's okay. I'm cool with that. Give me a little cool emoji. The guy with the sunglasses, all right? Cool. All right, real quick, and I'm gonna wrap this up. Then we're gonna do our case study. I'm gonna let you guys go. At Real Investors, we have kind of a model that we use, which is, we believe that there's 5 phases that you go through as a real estate investor. There's what we call the quick cash phase, the chunks of cash phase, the cash flow phase, the wealth acceleration phase, and then ultimately legacy wealth. And each one kind of stands for itself and it speaks for itself. It stands alone. Quick cash, well, that's bird dogging and wholesaling and the stuff that this class is really all about. All right. Then there's, okay, now that you taught me how to get my first deal done, and you maybe show me how to, make some quick cash, how do I make these chunks of cash? Get those $20,000, $30,000 checks, $40,000 checks, like doing things like rehabbing. And that helps set you up. Again, we talked about this yesterday as the foundation. That helps you set you up to now be in a position to get out there and buy some properties and accumulate some properties and get into the next phase, which we call cash flow. And then after you've done that, I've got a couple of tricks up my sleeve that I've taught many of the folks here at Real Investors, what I call wealth acceleration. Not just simply making 100,000 a year, but how do you make it go from 100 to 200,000 in less than 30 days? That kind of stuff. And I'm going to share with you some techniques, even before this class is over, that's going to make you go, I get it now. I understand now. But it's a process. It's phases. It's growth. What works at Real Investors, real quick, and here's your little 2-minute commercial, and then I'm going to jump off the subject. We have classes for every one of these 5 phases that you're going to go through. Our classes are not 3-day boot camps. They're 90 days in duration. Every one of our core classes, there's 5 core classes that addresses each one of these 5 phases. They're 90 days. Now, do I mean 90 days like the 21-day class? No, you are not going to have to sit through and endure me every day for 90 days. No, 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 no. But it's much more like a semester at a college or a university, with the big difference being you're not taking 5 or 6 or 7 classes, you're just taking one class. And that one class might meet once a week, it might meet 2 times a week, it might meet every other week. It just depends on the subject matter and which phase we're talking about. Like example, we got a class on how to raise money. And the central focus of that class is showing you how to do private investor presentations. And as a result, we're going to teach you how to do a private investor presentation. That class doesn't meet every week. That class doesn't meet, well, actually it does. Actually, we did this past meet every week for a couple of weeks. But for the most part, it's kind of like a once a week kind of thing. But the main thing is getting you set up to do your own private investor presentations and showing you how to do that. So it had a couple of all days and a couple of individuals. Stephanie teaches the rehabbing class. She likes to meet 2 days a week and then take a week off, 2 days a week. That's okay. So every class has a slightly different rhythm and a slightly different structure, but it goes over 90 days to give you plenty of time to get the lesson, plenty of time to make up the lesson, and most importantly, plenty of time to demonstrate that you know what we're teaching you and shows that you know what we're teaching you. So they're 90 days in duration. They're taught in your own backyard. All these classes are taught right here. You don't have to hop on a plane. You don't have to book a hotel. They're taught by local experts with a proven track record. There's plenty of opportunity to look over our shoulder and plenty of opportunity for us to look over your shoulder. And they're built with the understanding that you guys are busy. I know you're busy. I know this 21-day class is a big sacrifice for a lot of people, right? And I appreciate it. I really, really do. And that's why I want to make sure I deliver what I promise you. And when we get into those other classes, and when you choose to take another class, they also understand, because I don't teach those other classes. I teach one of them, but not all of them. But those classes are designed with the understanding that, hey, you're busy. And you may need to do a makeup. You may need to see the recorded session. You may need to get together in a small group. We get it. We understand. We fully get it. But most importantly, all of those classes have clear stated goals and they're results focused. If the class is called How to Rehab a House, you're going to learn how to rehab a house. If the class is called How to Raise Money, you're going to learn how to raise money. If the class is called Commercial Real Estate, you're going to learn commercial real estate. They're results focused, not information focused. In the 3-day boot camps, they just want to push as much information on you in 3 days and be done with you. In our classes, we want to make sure that you're actually learning and getting results and clear guidance for every step of your real estate investor journey. All right, so that's my commercial / lecture for tonight. I got a quick case study. It's about 4 or 5 minutes. If you got your AHA sheets ready, I'm going to go ahead and push the press button, and I'd like for you to take some notes, and then it's going to be recorded and available inside of Facebook. So if you feel free to go back and watch it again inside of Facebook if you miss anything first time through. Here you go.
I was working full-time as an engineer. Actually, that's what brought me out of the DC area. Was I finished grad school in Illinois, studied electrical engineering, and I was recruited out to work for the government in a research lab here in the DC metro region. And immediately when I got here in 2004, I saw these people, running around like everybody else saw, making a ton of money in real estate. And I couldn't quite figure out exactly what they were doing or how they were making all that money, but I knew real estate intrigued me and I wanted to get involved in some way. So from there, I started to get very interested in knowing more about what was real estate. Unfortunately for me, the market crashed in 2008, and sort of my dream of going into investing sort of died around 2005 when the market peaked. But 2008, when the market sort of, in my mind, was at a bottom, it seemed like a good time for me to think about starting to jump into real estate investing. And I did some searching online. I really didn't know anything about investing, even though I'd done loans and knew people were making money. I really didn't know what the rules of the game were. I didn't know how to get started. I was really in over my head in terms of what to do. And that's when I sort of went online, looked around for who the local experts were, and I found Realinvestors in Maryland. The things that were said about Sherman online were very positive, and I thought I'll just go and check it out, give it a chance. And I went to Real Investors and met Sherman for the first time, heard him speak, and I was sold. I signed up for the 21-day course. I did everything Sherman told us in the class. You know, I listened to Earl Nightingale. I listened to Earl Nightingale every day on the way to work. My commute back and forth to work during that time was about 30 minutes each way. You know, he said to commit to this business, whatever amount of time you're going to put in this business, commit to it. And I did that. I started spending an hour a day in the beginning. Then it became 2 hours a day. This was part-time. Then I started spending, you know, a Saturday doing this business. Then it became like every day of every weekend hustling, trying to find a deal. And I almost gave up, to be honest with you. I almost gave up with this business. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a realtor called me from Arlington, who was sort of a younger, hotshot, up-and-coming realtor. And her name was Lita, I'll never forget. She called me about 5 o'clock, 5:30 after I got out of work one day. And this lady, Lita, called and said, you know, Josh, if you don't give me a commitment to this deal by tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., this deal is done. And quite frankly, if you don't do this deal, you'll probably never do a deal, because she said the numbers are so good on this deal that if you can't do this one, then nothing I bring your way is going to work for you. And so at that time, I had another business with my partner was actually somebody that I worked with. We were both engineers. And, you know, him and I talked about it from, was it 5:30 all the way till 11, 12 o'clock that night. We were going back and forth. Should we do it? Should we not do it? Because quite frankly, at that time, we didn't have a lot of money, and losing our investment on that deal, you know, it would have been the end for us. It would have been our first and last deal. And quite possibly, as Sherman will tell a lot of investors starting out, you know, if you're just starting out and you do one bad deal, you know, you could be permanently out of the game or even in financial ruin. And quite frankly, if this deal hadn't gone our way, it would have been the end of us. And so between the two of us, we had a very sleepless night that night. I tossed and turned until 5 in the morning. I couldn't sleep. But it turned out I called Lita back the very next morning, and I said, let's go for it. And we went in there, we signed the contract for 175. So we were looking over the shoulder of experienced investors in the DC region at that time, sort of similar to what we are today, people that were rehabbing a considerable amount of deal flow annually in the DC metro that had a lot of experience. We were looking over those people's shoulders, and we were seeing what kind of contractors, who they were using. We went in and hired one of those contractors who quoted us $35,000 to fix, at that time, this row house in Arlington. Granted, this is 2009. And we went in there, did it for 35 grand. It was a 3.5-week job. At the end of that, Lita came back, and I said, Lita, we finished the project. What do you think? And she said, the row house looks beautiful, and guess what? I have a buyer for you. And I said, what do you mean you have a buyer for us? So we just finished the project yesterday, and I'm pretty sure that I'm the only one that has the keys other than the contractor. And she said, trust me, I have a buyer for you. And little did I know, not even 3-4 days later, she showed up with this guy, and the property never got listed. She actually had a buyer, and this individual purchased the property not even 4 weeks later for $349. We ended up making, I think it was $110,000 in a little over maybe 65 days or so forth on our first deal. This was back in 2009. And after that, you know, doing your first deal and completing it and making money, you know, first of all, that was more than I was making in a full year at that time on one deal. So doing one deal like that in 65 days and seeing that this business really worked, it totally changed my life. And it changed my partner's life. I mean, life has never been the same. Quite honestly, life has never been the same for us since doing that first deal. It was incredible. And I think your first deal is something that you never forget. And that first deal became 2 deals, became 4 deals, became 8 deals, and so forth. We've done so many deals now that, you know, it's been unbelievable. It's been an unbelievable ride. It's been an unbelievable experience. And stuff like the properties behind me that you're looking at today, we do these on, you know, we're doing these on a daily, monthly basis. We're doing several of these a month in the Virginia area now, and in the DC area. It's been an unbelievable ride. And I have so much to thank for Sherman. I mean, what Sherman did for me, he totally changed my life. top to bottom. And it's you know, I'm actually getting a little bit emotional about this, but he totally changed my life top to bottom. I mean, the knowledge that he gave to us, the way that he got me going, totally changed my life in every respect. And I'll never forget the words, you know, and I think he still says this to people who are starting out today, you know, go in motion, stay in motion. And I went in motion in 2009 and I've never stopped. And I think the sky's the limit for, now we're not just, you know, at this point, a solopreneur going at it, but we're a full-blown organization with employees. We have different people doing different jobs, different roles. I typically don't get out to the sites that much at this point. I don't typically check on the day-to-day of different projects like this one, but you know, it's been an unbelievable journey, and I have Sherman to thank for every step of the way of it. I think he's the best mentor that you can find, quite honestly. If I was to go back and do it all over again, I would sit in Sherman's class, just like I did in 2009, you know, take every word that he tells you, like a book. A lot of what he tells you, to be honest, you won't appreciate it. You're not going to appreciate every little detail until you get more advanced in your career. And then you're going to look back and it's going to click like, you know, these are some of the things that Sherman told me, and I didn't quite get it at the time, but I get it now. So, you know, soak as much as you can in from a guy like Sherman, because he has a lot to teach you.
Okay, guys, in the chat box, on Facebook, on a scale of 1 to 5, how we do today? 1 being, don't ever call me again, leave me alone, Sherman. 5 being, yeah, I'm glad I showed up tonight. All right, I'll be posting the homework. The homework is really, really simple. 2 things. I am going to send you a copy of the Real Investors catalog of all the classes, mentoring, coaching, and stuff that we do. Please do me a favor, don't print it out. It's, you know, full color, it's like 30 some pages, but just, you know, download it, scan it, take a look and go, oh, look, there's a class on this and there's a class on that. And yeah, okay, I see what Sherman's saying. And just understand this. We need to focus on getting your first deal, and that's what we're here together for. But as soon as we do that, if you want to learn something new, something more, we're ready to help you. So just download it, put it aside, or bookmark it. And tomorrow we really start to roll up our sleeves and start building our 6-figure business and getting that first deal done. Okay. If there's any ahas from tonight's class, feel free to hand them in. That's your assignment. Just tell me what your aha moment was for today. If you didn't get a chance to do your daily task sheet, or maybe you want to take another stab at it, because I'm not going to be talking about daily task sheets anymore. That's behind us. We're moving forward. But if you want me to, you know, if you want one more attempt, one more stab at uploading that, I'll take a look at those too. But the main thing I want you to do is just sort of give me what your ahas were, what was your takeaway. We've been recording into the Facebook group, so if you want to go back and sort of watch this again or watch Josh's video again, just tell me what your ahas, and that's really your homework assignment for tonight, okay? What time are we getting together tomorrow? Put it in the chat box. 7. That's right, 7 o'clock tomorrow. Thank you guys again for bearing with me and starting an hour late tonight. I really appreciate it. Allowed me to attend another meeting I really had to be at, and I really appreciate you guys. Thank you very much. Please turn in your homework, your ahas, and I'll see you back here tomorrow, sleeves rolled up, ready to get to work, and let's start working on getting that first deal done, okay? Thank you, guys. Good night.
Good night.
God bless. And I'll see you tomorrow at
7.